On January 10, 1954, a British passenger jet broke apart over the Mediterranean. No distress call, no survivors. 3 months later, it happened again. Same aircraft type, same silence. 56 people died, and no one could explain why. The answer, when it finally came, traced back to something no engineer had thought to question: the shape of the windows. On the morning of January 10, 1954, BOAC Flight 781 lifted off from Rome, bound for London. The aircraft was a de Havilland Comet, the world's first jet-powered airliner. 35 people were on board. At 10:01 Greenwich Mean Time, the crew radioed that they had reached cruising altitude. Less than 20 minutes later, the plane broke apart over the Mediterranean. There was no distress call, no warning. The wreckage scattered into the sea south of Ischia. Not a single passenger or crew member survived. 3 months later, on April 8, 1954, South African Airways Flight 201 departed from Rome on a similar comet headed to Johannesburg. The crew reported normal operations as they climbed through 20,000 feet. 2 minutes after their last routine radio message, all contact was lost. The aircraft vanished near the Cape Verde Islands. Again, there were no survivors. Wreckage washed ashore days later, confirming the fate of all 21 passengers and 6 crew. Both flights ended in silence. No emergency calls, no clues from the air. The only evidence lay somewhere beneath the water. 2 modern jets, destroyed without warning. 56 lives lost, and no one could say why. The comet, once a symbol of progress, had become an unsolved riddle. The search for answers would have to begin at the bottom of the sea. In the early 1950s, the de Havilland Comet stood at the front of the jet age. When it entered service in May 1952, the Comet became the world's first passenger jetliner. It flew at 460 knots, about 50% faster than the fastest piston-engine airliners of its day. The Douglas DC-6 and Lockheed Constellation, mainstays of transatlantic travel, cruised at just 300 knots. The Comet soared higher, too, climbing above 40,000 feet, where weather was smoother and the ride quieter. Passengers could cross continents in hours rather than days. For Britain, still recovering from the war, the Comet was more than an airplane. It was a symbol of national pride and proof that British engineering could lead the world. Every flight, every headline, was watched closely. Airlines from across the globe placed orders. The Comet's designers, engineers at de Havilland, became household names. They believed they had built not just a machine, but a new era of travel. Yet beneath the optimism, every pressurized flight was quietly testing the limits of new materials and unproven designs. Each takeoff and landing bent the metal skin of the fuselage over and over in ways no airliner had experienced before. The Comet's speed and altitude were its selling points, but they also pushed the aircraft into unknown territory. When the unexplained breakups began, the stakes were clear. This was not just a technical problem. The fate of Britain's leadership in aviation and the future of jet travel itself hung in the balance. Royal Navy's salvage crews mobilized within hours of each crash, racing to locate the Comet's remains scattered across the Mediterranean seabed. The operation combined methodical search patterns with new technology. Side-scan sonar swept broad arcs below the surface, tracing echoes from buried metal. When sonar identified promising targets, divers prepared for deep descents, some reaching depths of 180 meters, where light faded and water pressure squeezed every joint. Aboard HMS Parthian, engineers deployed a Pi underwater television camera, transmitting live black and white images from nearly 600 feet down. For the first time, investigators could see the twisted fuselage and torn cabin panels lying undisturbed on the ocean floor. Each recovery was slow and deliberate. Divers fitted lift slings around major fragments, which were then winched to the surface and cataloged. Modified trawl nets and steel grapnels combed the grid, pulling up everything from window frames to sections of wing root. Every piece was logged, tagged, and sealed for transport. Over 3 weeks, crews recovered about 70% of the aircraft's structural mass, nearly 13,000 kilograms, out of the 18,200 originally built. The scale and care of the operation ensured that the evidence would reach the lab nearly intact, ready for the next phase of the investigation. Inside Hangar 3 at Farnborough, the investigation left the ocean behind and turned to the painstaking work of reconstruction. Royal Aircraft Establishment engineers, led by Dr. John C. Wright, began with crates of wreckage, each fragment tagged, cataloged, and laid out on a steel gantry. Piece by piece, they rebuilt the Comet's forward cabin, measuring every skin panel against the original drawings. Their focus settled on the passenger windows. Here, the rivet holes in the recovered aluminum matched the design plans exactly, but the method of assembly revealed something troubling. Rivets had been driven straight through the thin skin. Skipping the adhesive layer meant to distribute stress. This shortcut left tiny flaws at the window edges, where the metal was already most vulnerable. As the structure took shape, attention narrowed further. The corners of the square windows showed elongated rivet holes, subtle signs of stretching and fatigue. The forward cabin fragment, especially around the window frames, became the center of suspicion. Cracks radiated from these points, the largest fractures aligning with the window geometry and rivet pattern. The evidence pointed to a single origin, a hidden weakness where design and assembly choices met. The next step would demand a controlled test, but the target was now unmistakable. Engineers at Farnborough faced a puzzle no wreckage alone could solve. To reproduce the mysterious breakup, they constructed a tank large enough to submerge a full Comet fuselage. The setup was simple in theory. Seal the airframe inside, fill the tank with water, and use hydraulic pumps to pressurize the cabin from within. But the choice of water was deliberate. Air, when compressed, stores energy like a coiled spring. If the structure failed, the blast could destroy both the evidence and the lab. Water, by contrast, is nearly incompressible. If a crack formed, the rupture would be sudden but contained, revealing the exact location of failure without catastrophic violence. Technicians set the controls to cycle the pressure up and down, mimicking what the aircraft had experienced in flight: climb, cruise, descent, and repeat. Each cycle flexed the skin ever so slightly, just as every takeoff and landing had done since the Comet's first flight. The team kept count as the numbers climbed into the thousands. No dramatic signs appeared, no obvious deformation, but the stress was accumulating in silence. After nearly 3,000 simulated flights, a faint line appeared at the corner of a window. The crack crept outward, following the path seen in the recovered wreckage. Water began to seep, then spurt from the tiny fracture. Technicians gathered around the tank, watching as the flaw grew in real time. The evidence was now undeniable. The square window, with its sharp corners, had become the weak link. The rupture hadn't come from a single violent event, but from thousands of nearly invisible injuries, each one too small to notice, until the structure could take no more. Imagine bending a paperclip back and forth. At first, nothing seems to happen, but with each bend, tiny cracks form inside the metal. Eventually, the wire snaps, not from a single force, but from the damage building up, cycle after cycle. This is how metal fatigue works. Aircraft experience the same kind of repeated stress every time they climb and descend. Each pressurization cycle stretches the skin of the fuselage, then lets it relax. The change is almost invisible, but over thousands of flights, the effect is real and cumulative. In the Comet, the problem hid in plain sight. The square windows had sharp corners, where the metal had to change direction abruptly. These corners acted like the kink in a bent wire, focusing the stress into a tiny area. Engineers call this a stress concentration. Tests showed that the corners could triple the local tension compared to a smooth curve. With each flight, microscopic cracks grew at these points, invisible to the naked eye. When the cracks reached a critical length, about as wide as a human hair, the skin could rupture suddenly, causing the catastrophic breakups seen in the Comet disasters. Manufacturing choices made things worse. The original design called for an adhesive layer to spread the load around the window frame. On the production line, many windows windows were riveted straight through the thin aluminum skin, skipping the sealant. Each rivet hole left tiny scratches, acting as seeds for cracks right where the stress was highest. What looked like a minor shortcut became a fatal amplifier. The Comet didn't fail because of a single error or one bad flight. It was wounded from the start, weakened by the geometry of its windows and the shortcuts of its assembly. The physical evidence made the cause feel inevitable, a chain reaction set in motion by the shape of a corner and the slip of a tool. Every jet window you see today, with its rounded edges, is a quiet memorial to invisible forces and the lives lost learning their lesson. Geometry still draws the line between safety and disaster. Progress in aviation is measured in hard-won increments, because nature always collects what engineering overlooks.